Everyone, welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 11. It is Wednesday, July 22nd at 4:11 p.m. Eastern Time. And at least here in the New York metropolitan area, we're like in a heat wave, I guess, it's throughout the a lot of the Northeast, I guess, I don't know, East. Anyway, I'm going to focus on the morality again of this coronavirus COVID-19 crisis, because nobody, the media, nobody's talking about it, and there's a major disconnect. If we genuinely believe in God or a higher power, if that's, and I think I think people genuinely do believe that. I believe it. For me, it's more of an understanding. Just briefly, in other words, like the universe didn't create itself, or at least since the Big Bang, and the universe manifests intelligence. This is like, the way the laws of nature work together, and, mathematics, it's so, it's so amazing in so many ways. Just, if there's an to me, if you define God the way God is defined in the Bible, that God is everything, God is all powerful, well, the universe is everything, the laws of nature are all powerful. It's pretty hard to deny God's existence. But anyway, but I guess that's not really necessary to go into that, because 90% of you believe in God or a higher power. And again, I'm not sure how many of you believe that that we get rewarded and punished for what we do and we don't do. But that is so obvious that to contend otherwise seems kind of curious. I mean, when we make mistakes, when we're careless about our health, we get sick. When we're careless about our finances, we lose money. When we, in my personal life, in the life, throughout the world, I just see this a lot, and again, I've said this before, people are not all good or all bad, we're a combination, and collectively as a world, we've done a lot of good, but that doesn't apparently make up for the bad that we've done. And again, let's go to slavery, okay? I mean, like right now, people say, "Oh yeah, slavery was such a horrible institution," right? And yeah, it was. I mean, like who would deny that now? But in the early 1800s, before the Civil War, especially in the 1700s, probably most people here in the United States just were in denial. How could you not, see problems about justice, problems are just about dignity with slavery, but they didn't see it. They didn't see it, and finally, I don't know, many people haven't learned that the abolitionist movement was, initially it started in England, but here in the United States, it started in Pennsylvania by the Quakers. And there weren't all that many of them. They met at a local place, and then they just expanded the movement. And so, I mean, we need something like that now. Again, like slavery to them became glaringly immoral. glaringly wrong. Maybe, maybe it's taking this COVID-19 to get us to face this reality of how we treat farm animals. But here, this is where we are now, and well, again, it's surreal that we still are in denial. The media is in denial, politicians are in denial, and the clergy is in denial, and business, of course, is in denial. So our institutions, they don't want to deal with this, and you have to wonder why not. Well, I mean, relative, for example, to how, well, no, I don't think it's a proper analogy. I was going to compare it to climate change. I mean, the media has been publishing, for example, there's an article in the New York Times today that says scientists now have discounted their less severe predictions for warming, within the next 50 years because of climate change, global warming. And the scenario they present is surreally horrible. So horrible that I think that, in order to get through something like that, we're going to have to right now we're working on pharmaceuticals to combat this COVID-19 vaccine for this, and ideally, vaccine for future pandemics. But this, it's kind of ironic. There's that coffee mug behind there on that dresser with the smiley. Back one of my second television series back in the early 2000s was called The Happiness Show. It's about, I just basically reviewed the literature, the social science literature on happiness, and would present episodes, about 138 in total, over the course of 3 years. And I had a co-host for a while, Lionel Ketchin. And we would basically just give advice based on the research on how to become happier. And that was good. The world hasn't really, happiness is everywhere in advertising. These products, they sell happiness, all over. But in terms of what could have been done, what still can be done in happiness, we should be teaching happiness in schools, that hasn't been done. But one of the interventions that I would suggest on that series is that create a happiness pill. We have antidepressants that work when people become depressed. They lose their happiness, and that clinical depression generally. But these antidepressants are also prescribed to people from their general practitioner who aren't necessarily clinically depressed, but who want to feel better. So what I was advocating was, well, we should have much more research on these kinds of pharmaceuticals to combat just the ordinary, what Freud referred to as misery. And I don't buy into that. I think, there's about, for example, 70% of us here in the United States, our level of happiness, on a scale of 1 to 100 is about 70, 75%, whatever. So it's not like we're unhappy, but these are trying times. And what I'm trying to say is, if we don't learn, it's kind of like a criminal. If a criminal doesn't learn, they continue to commit crimes. Eventually they're caught. Crime doesn't pay, and they're paid. They unfortunately, very unfortunately, have to pay a very severe price. And that's where we're going as a world. We're not listening to our conscience. We're not listening to the scientists. It's kind of like we've lost this idea of responsibility and it's not just how we mistreat these animals. It's like we're aborting as many lives each year as die of every other cause of death combined. 50 to 60 million. Naturally, we're just wrecking the planet for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to the point where our great-grandchildren, they're going to be asking, you know, why were they born into this world with so many problems? I mean, you know, I tend to be optimistic. I tend to believe that we are going to get it, that you will awaken, that you'll understand how evil you are, you know, just being complicit in this abuse and torture of animals, paying people essentially to torture these animals so you can get your meat products at a cheaper price. So yeah, it could be that you know we're moving to a world where people, you know, for whatever reason, and I don't blame anyone. You know, I just, like, you know, we're born how we're born, and we're born into this country, into this world that was kind of like, you know, corrupt in a lot of ways when we got here, and our institutions are corrupt in a lot of ways, or at least again, there's a lot of good, but there's a lot that goes undone. Again, climate change, abortions, animal abuse, you know, those three major, global poverty, you know, we should have ended that decades ago. So, I mean, it's hard to know what to say. I mean, like, how do you you basically put it out of your minds, right? You know, I once asked somebody, you know, like, why don't you know, why don't you think about this more? This, you know, because this woman that I was talking to, she was not a vegan. She, you know, omnivore like most people, and she said, because, like, if I dwelled or thought about all that suffering, all that cruelty, it would drive me nuts. That's what she, you know, essentially said. And it was a, you know, it was a very sincere answer, and it's a very, you know, but you know, that so what, we're living in denial. It's kind of like, you know, in a certain sense, you know, right now we are very, very rightly condemning Trump for putting his election prospects over the lives of a lot of Americans who, you know, thousands have already lost their lives because he continues to refuse to do what we need him to do to properly fight this pandemic. You know, ordering companies to manufacture the masks and the gowns and the tests we need. You know, being behind this instead of refusing to wear a mask, and just downplaying this as he's done for months. We get, most of us, that he's being, you know, exceptionally evil, and people are dying. A lot of people are dying because he's killing them. He's killing them indirectly, but they're dying because of what he's refusing to do. And yeah, he's really, he's like, I mean, like, he's insanely evil. He's like, you know, it's like, you know, we have a conscience, you know, part of our mind, our brain that deals with right and wrong. With him, I read a biography about him. He had a difficult life, of overbearing father, kind of a distant, cold mother. So yeah, I guess, you know, you can explain that, but like something went seriously wrong with him. And I mentioned him to, you know, to make the comparison. Well, something went seriously wrong with us as a United States, with us as a world. You know, I could understand 100 years ago, before we had the technology, the science to be able to, like, understand that we don't need to eat meat, that actually eating meat is killing us, and eggs and dairy, you know, that we'd be much better off without it. So I could understand 100 years ago. And also we were much less rich 100 years ago, you know, per capita. But now, with this world of abundance, maybe that may not last too much longer with this COVID-19, but we have both the science and the resources, the knowledge to understand not just that we do not need to eat meat and dairy and eggs, and they actually make us ill, they make us sick, they're responsible for so many diseases, but they cause so much suffering. And like, we're in collective denial. We just like, you know, we're like Trump. You know, Trump is, you know, he was spoiled by his wealth, whatever he, you know, he just feels rules don't apply to him. You know, it's like a spoiled child syndrome. It's like, you know, that's what's affecting us all. We refuse, you know, we need to believe that we're good people. That yeah, oh, you know, oh, it can't be wrong the way we're treating animals, because you know, my family and I and my friends, we're good people. And yes, you're good in a lot of ways, but you know, it's like, you know, when slavery was the law here in the United States, you had a lot of slave holders who would like literally whip their slaves and mistreat their slaves severely, constantly, and then go to church, you know, and fill themselves with these feelings of you know, I'm such a pious, good person because I'm, you know, so, you know, and I'm sure, you know, these slaveholders were probably good to their families, just like in World War II, the Nazis, the SS soldiers, the, you know, people who tortured other people, they probably went home and were good to their families. But you can't discount, ignore the evil that they did, and you can't discount and ignore the evil that you are doing, you know, to the extent that you're complicit in this severe, you know, abuse of animals. You know, I mean, almost all of us are doing it. You know, I've been a vegan for over 15 years. About 2% of us, perhaps between 1 or 2. I mean, I think maybe 3 or 4% of us are vegetarian. And some vegetarians, for example, will eat meat and eggs and dairy. They will eat fish and eggs and dairy. They won't eat meat. But you know, there's so much harm that comes about in the dairy industry, in the egg industry. It's horrible. I mentioned it yesterday. So, I mean, like, what's it going to take for you to wake up? You know, for you to understand that yes, you do a lot of good. Fine, we all do a lot of good, but to the extent that you're buying meat and fish and dairy and eating it and then supporting this really systematic brutality against animals, you know, you really can't call yourself a good person. You know, there's a lot of people in prison who, you know, lived good lives, supposedly, apparently, until they do something heinous, they kill someone or do something really, really, you know, immoral. And, you know, they spend 10, 20 years in prison as a result. And it's hard to see them as quote unquote good people anymore. I mean, again, there's goodness in them, of course, but, and going back to the question of punishment, you know, as we began this, if you believe in God or higher power, you know, to have God or higher power without having reward and punishment is to misunderstand God, to not understand God. You know, because what purpose would a God have, you know, to just like exist and what we get blessings regardless of whether we do good or bad? And then, I mean, who do you hold accountable for the evil? And like, you can't really hold us. I mean, like people believe in free will. It's like, yeah, well, we deserve it. Fine, we deserve it. You know, and I don't happen to believe in free will, but you know, to the extent we deserve it, you know, we're not punishing ourselves. We didn't create this COVID-19. We don't create the punishments. We don't judge ourselves in that way. So, I mean, what, you know, this is a show, again, this is the 12th episode. I think it's the 12th episode. Hold on for a minute. Yeah, 12th episode of a series that, I mean, right now I'm just learning about vaccines, pandemics, and it's really bummed me out. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, the hole we're in, the threats that we would reasonably anticipate are so dire that it's so anyway, I'm reading about that, but I think what I need to start doing as this show evolves is to start researching denial, how people who are so obviously committing so much evil are completely oblivious to it, remain oblivious. And nobody wants to deal with it. The politicians won't deal with it, because because the corporations that finance their campaigns don't want them to deal with it, because those corporations know they're doing a lot of wrong, and they're holding their profits above this morality. And I mean, the educational system should be dealing with this. You should have Harvard and Princeton, MIT, dealing with the moral components of this. But they're pretty much locked into this economic system. They get a lot of their funding, a lot of their endowments from rich people, and they don't want to rock the boat too much, so they're silent. The media is completely, you never hear about God from the media. I'm sorry, you don't hear about the morality. You hear about the injustice. Yes, Black Lives Matter, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and yes, they should be doing that. But they completely ignore, the plight of these 70 billion land animals and many more fish, seafood that are like, live horrible lives in so many ways. So it's almost as if, the people who should get this the best are our clergy. I mean, that's in a certain sense, that's their job. Religion is about understanding the nature of reality, but to the greatest extent, understanding it within the paradigm of right and wrong, within the paradigm of like, there are things that we think and do and say that are good, that are helpful to our happiness and to the virtue of the world. And then there are things that we think and say and do that are counterproductive, that create pain and suffering. And that's what religion is about. That's what, unfortunately in today's world, this corruption has expanded into the clergy. So that the clergy, they're in a bit of a bind because we live in such a corrupt society that their congregations, for example, they're not vegan. They're consuming this meat and fish and dairy and being complicit in this cruelty. And so the clergy are afraid to confront them for a reason that makes sense, because if they started confronting their congregants, helping them understand how evil they are, they may be out of a job. They may, the congregants may say, well, we want somebody who's not going to, accuse us of things like that. But it's not even like, among the clergy, again, the number of vegans, percentage of vegans here in the United States is about 2% maybe. And among the clergy, I doubt it's over 5%, I doubt it's, the clergy. So basically, the clergy are complicit in this also. So we move into this period of punishment. That's where we're in, and it's like this hurricane season. We're already at G. It's the earliest ever in history. It's a tropical storm, whatever, but usually it's alphabetized. They start with A and go through the alphabet. So the first time, and this is very early in the season, we still have August to go. We're being punished in a lot of ways. This heat wave, Trump is president, God, it's like, and the Bible warns us of this, like of times of reckoning, some people believe that this is the beginning of the apocalypse. I hope not. you know, I hope things don't continue to get worse and worse in different ways. You know, economic collapse, another depression. So getting back to this pandemic started in a wet market in China, wild animals, right? But if you do the research on pandemics, you know, pigs, birds, cows, mad cow disease, ducks, you know, this is where most of these pandemics come from. The Spanish flu that killed between 50 and 100 million people, you know, was started, they believe, in a pig farm. Avian flu comes from birds. So it's not, you know, these bats tend to be the reservoirs. They basically carry these diseases. They don't get sick from them themselves, but they will infect a chicken, or they'll eat some fruit, you know, and not completely eat it, and then the pigs will eat the remains. They become ill, and so basically, you know, what we need to do is stop farming animals to prevent this major threat. And then, you know, this is kind of like a poetic justice, poetic punishment. That, yeah, this is a zoonotic pandemic. It comes from animals, and what goes around comes around. Karma. This is what's happening to us. And I should do an episode. I should probably, yeah, I'll do it eventually. Basically, people are in a denial to a certain extent because they believe in free will. In other words, if they didn't believe in free will, like Einstein and Darwin and Freud and Newton, you know, 4 top scientists, they didn't believe in free will. I don't believe in free will. I did a 216 episode series on that, television series. But if people did not believe in free will, they wouldn't have to go into denial about this. They would be able to admit, oh yes, we're doing this. It's not our fault because we didn't create ourselves. We didn't create this world. You know, it's all predetermined. But as long as people believe in free will, this truth that that they are paying people to abuse, torture animals is too harsh for people to accept because they take it personally. It's unfortunate. All right, about a half a minute left. Hope you're enjoying the day. Catch this on YouTube. We're here Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 Optimum, 45 Verizon. And yeah, tomorrow, you know, I'm not sure what I'll do for Friday's show, but all right, talk to you soon.